Okay, so let's get back to where we were. So this is our first version of this. Again, if you haven't saved your work at this point, I would save your work. I'm going to double click on the hand to drop down. Now in this case, I've got my mask is already on here, listed as the new version. I need to do multiple copies of the new version as well. So I'm going to throw the mask away just temporarily. I do not want to apply it. I'm just going to delete it. Don't worry, I've got it sitting right over here as my blue background knockout. It's fine. I'm going to duplicate my version here, my new version. So again, Command J. I'm going to call this, I'm going to do 4 of them. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. The top one we'll call hair. The bottom one under it we'll call one just under its skin. The one just under it, sweater. And the one just under it, background, blue background. Don't call it background because it can get confusing with the word, the bottom layer that's already called background. So I just call it blue background. And say OK. Come back over to my channel, to the blue background knockout. Hover over the thumbnail. You don't need to select it. Just hover over the thumbnail, Command click. Loads it as a selection. Come back over to the sweater part and add it as a layer mask. Turn off the both of the layers or all of the layers that are, oh, that was actually on the sweater one. I'm just going to drag it down and put it on the blue background one. Turn off everybody who's underneath it and above it. And I've got just my blue background, and this is basically where I want it to go. So things are good right now as far as this part goes. So I'm going to go to my next version now. So I'm going to turn on the new version copy down below. I'm going to turn off the blue background because if there's something going on here, I don't need it to confuse anything at all. And I'm going to turn on my sweater. So I have my new version down at the very bottom is active, and I've got the sweater one active. And I don't even know that I really need the new version selected. Older versions of Select and Mask worked a little bit differently, and you couldn't really see anything. So this is a better version of it right now. So this is basically just where I'm going to start. I am still on the pasteboard. I'm going to stay on the pasteboard right now, and we'll see what ultimately ends up happening. So I've got my sweater selection, not my selection. I've got my sweater layer is selective and active. I'm going to go up to the Select menu, down to Select and Mask, and I'm going to use the Select and Mask workspace to actually do this. And this is what I was talking about right here. You can see if I go to 0 transparency or all the way up to 100% transparency, I always still see the image. I don't get the onion skin on here. So hit Cancel out of here and turn off the eyeball of everything that is underneath what you want to do, because what's happening is it's seeing that new version underneath it. You remember when we did the girl on the beach? And if you drug the transparency slider all the way to one direction, you completely saw the girl in her background. If you went to completely the opposite direction, you saw the beach. Well, what's happening here is that I've got another copy of the girl that is my beach, my background here, so I don't see the onion skin. So with everything underneath it turned off and everything above it turned off, just the sweater selection, just the sweater layers active, up to the Select menu, down to Select and Mask. And now when your onion skin is set at 50%, you'll be able to see what actually is selected and what's not selected. Now, I want to select the sweater for this. This is the tool that this is my selection for the sweater. So to do that, on the tools that are on the far left-hand side at the very top one is the quick selection tool, and I'm going to start with that tool. But remember, this tool, you do not want this tool to touch any edge you want it to find. So you need to stay away from it. So I'm going to start on the left shoulder, and I'm simply going to click and work my way down and then sort of up the arm a little bit. But you can see, look how far I'm staying away from all of this. And make sure that you get the sweater, the white sweater part up at the top and the rest of the sweater down at the bottom. Now, to make sure that you have everything selected that you ultimately want to have selected, you can actually change your view. So I'm going to click on my view, and I'm going to come down, and I'm going to pick black and white, and it will actually show you the quality of your edge. So I'm going to zip in. Now, when I come in and I see this scalloped edge that's along here, I love that part because this is something I would never be able to paint with a paintbrush, and it actually reveals the texture of the sweater. If you go back in your view and look at the onion skin again, you'll notice that there's a little scallopy part on here. That part I actually want to keep in here. But when I zoom in and look at what's going on right here, I can also see that there is part of her skin is still showing right here. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that part or not, because again, it's part of the selection and I don't want it to be part of the selection. So I'm going to make my quick selection tool really small. And you need to now click on the negative part of it or hold down the Option key to get rid of it. And I'm going to click and try to drag it down, and I just got rid of that little bit of skin that was down in the bottom part right there. I may have still a little baby corner of it down in the bottom, but I'll fix that once I actually get out. I'm going to take a look now around and I'm just looking at the quality of my edge. I'm feeling like that's pretty good, but look what I've missed. I've missed the whole sweater part that's up right by her thumb and her fingers. So I'm going to go back to the positive selection tool, and I'm simply going to click on that area. And when I do that, I end up with what a lot of you guys turned in. And I look at this. This looks horrible to me. This looks like it was either done with a refined edge or it's picking up. It's just, there's no point in spending 20 minutes here to do the work when I can do this with the pen tool in 5 seconds. So I'm going to hit Command Z to undo that. I'm just going to do that part up there by hand. I'm not going to worry about anything else. But I'm going to take a look at the rest of this, and I'm feeling pretty good about the rest of this. There's one other spot that I'm missing, and it is the collar on the very back. So far left side, there's part of the sweater goes around the back of her neck, and it's not selected here. So I'm going to try it again to get that with the quick selection tool. And I run into, I think, the same problem here. I think that looks like a refined edge, so it doesn't look right to me. So I'm going to hit Command Z and undo that. I'm going to get that with the quick selection, with a pen tool as well. So I'm feeling pretty good, especially about this transition underneath her hand. I think that part looks actually pretty good to me. So I'm going to scroll down here. You can do, this is a brand new for this version of Photoshop. They've actually added 2 ways for you to actually use this tool to generate your mask. One is called Color Aware, the other is called Object Aware. These are new. You can actually try the difference. So I'm going to click on Object Aware, and it's going to say switching the refined mode may result in different edge. Do you want to proceed? And I was like, yeah, I want to see what it looks like. So I'm going to say okay to that, and then take a look around and see if there was any change in this guy. I don't see anything. I'm going to come back to my color edge and see if that does anything different. I'm especially looking at this edge part right here. I don't see anything. Maybe it will make it easier to take a look at this as the mask by itself. To do that, click on your view drop down and come down to black and white. This will show it to you as the mask. And what I like about this is that I can see that I have fuzzy cuffs of her of the sweater part. I like that part. So I'm going to click on Object Aware now and see if I can spot any difference in that edge quality. And I don't see anything. Do you guys? No, I don't see any difference in this at all. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it at Color Aware. And then again, I'm going to stay away from all of the edge detections, the smart radiuses, the global refinements. I'm going to stay away from all of that. All I'm going to do is in the drop-down part, put this output to a layer mask. Again, you don't want to do it as a selection. You don't want to do it as a new layer. You don't want to do anything other than here. Just say, I'm going to do it as a layer mask. And I'm going to say, OK. So I'll click and I'll actually kick this down. Now we've got a couple problems, and you can see the first one is I actually do have an issue with that same spot where her wrists actually cross. That part's actually gotten screwed up for me right there, so I know that's going to happen. I'm going to hit the P key to get the pen tool, and I'm simply going to trace this out. And again, load that as a selection. So it is my temporary work path. So I'm going to Command click to load this as a selection. It is a selection now. I'm going to come up to my select menu, down to modify, feather this, add a 0.3 pixel, say okay to that. This now is area that should be hidden on my layer mask. That little piece of skin should be hidden. So again, filling it with black will hide it. Black hides, white reveals, black conceals. So in my case, Option Delete, it gets rid of that part. However, take a look at my screen really quickly. I also made a really small little mistake right there on this edge where I took out some of the yellow sweater. I need to bring that part back in. So, but again, the only thing that I can do right now is inside this selection. So I need to do the inverse of this selection to paint back in that area that actually needs to be added back in. So up to the select menu, down to inverse. Now the center of this little triangle is being protected. Everything else is available to me. I need the sweater in this part to actually show. So I'm going to paint with white, hit the X key to get my white as my foreground color, hit the B key to get a really small brush, make it a much smaller brush. Make sure that it is a hard brush. Make sure that it is normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and simply add just that small part of the sweater that I was missing. Command D to deselect. So this part's pretty good. I remember the two parts though that I do need to still get, and one is her shoulder, the part where the sweater goes back behind her shoulder. Now I can't see it with the mask on, it's actually being hidden. So I'm going to temporarily hide this mask by holding down the Shift key and clicking on it so that I can see everything. And then I just need to get this back edge right here. So I'm going to hit the P key to get the pen tool. And I'm simply going to, again, and I tend to make these things pretty organic. So I'm throwing down a lot of dots. I'm throwing in a few twists and turns. Basically, I'm staying pretty straight onto this until I get to her skin. And then I'm going to come back and put a small little bend in that. Hold down my Option key to get rid of this. Actually, I don't even need to hold down the Option key because I'm adding this to the sweater. So then I'm just going to come back, and this is what my pen tool selection looks like. I'm missing a little bit up in here, so this seems like I've missed this edge a little too much. So again, you can click on your direct selection tool, the white arrow, and I can click on this and push it slightly up. And push that one slightly up. And that feels better to me. And then again, in my path selection, I'm going to go ahead and save this just in case. We'll call it neck. Command click on the thumbnail to load it as a selection. Go back to my layer mask, to my layer palette. Click, hold down the Shift key and click on the sweater so that on the mask so that I can see it again. And again, this part of my tool, this part of my selection right here should be showing. So in a layer mask, that means this area that I've got selected should be filled with white to reveal it. White is my foreground color, Option Delete. Command D to deselect. Now I've got another version of that that's on the other side as well. Again, I can't see it. It's that little part of the sweater that's hidden inside her hand that's near her face. So again, I'm going to hold down the Shift key to temporarily hide the mask. I'm going to find this area and again go after this with the pen tool. She has a thumbnail. Do not include the thumbnail in your sweater selection. It doesn't belong there. Go back to my path palette, double click on the word work path, and I'm going to call it sweater near thumb. Command click on it to load it as a selection. Go up to the select menu, come down to modify, feather, 0.3 pixels will be great. Say OK to that. Go back to my layers palette, hold down the Shift key and click on that X to hide it again. And again, this is now sweater. I want to see it. It needs to be, this part of my mask needs to be filled with white in order for me to see it. Command D to deselect. And that's how long it took us to build the sweater. At this point, save your work. And if you again go to the top of your history palette, you will actually see we are accumulating a whole series of timestamps of saves. So if something were to go wrong somewhere in this process, instead of starting all over, you would go back one at a time through your history, starting with the most recent, working your way back to the oldest to find out where the mistake happened so that you don't have to redo everything. But at any rate, this part actually works out pretty well for me. So believe it or not, the last thing that we actually need to do is simply select either the hair or the skin. That's really the only part that's really pretty much left for us to do. I'm going to go after the skin. We'll sort of see what it looks like. I'm going to turn off my sweater layer. I'm going to turn on the skin layer. I'm going to make it visible and select it. And taking a look around this, yeah, I'm feeling like this might be a good shot. We'll see where things go in this, but that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to try doing the very same thing that I did before using the quick selection, the select and mask workspace. So with only the skin showing, everybody else underneath it is all turned off. I'm going to come up to the select menu, down to select and mask. I've got the onion skin again. I'm going to pick the top tool. Make sure that the plus icon, not the minus one, is selected. The top tool is the quick selection tool. I'm going to make it a little bit larger. And I'm going to start at the very top of her forehead and just sort of bring things down and see if I can't capture all of her skin. Now, it grabbed a lot of the hair that's on the left-hand side. It also grabbed the background that's on the left-hand side. That's okay. I'm going to say what? Selective mask. Yep. Where did you go for that? So hang on. So do you have the skin selection layer selected? Up to the select menu, down to select and mask. And then again, in your view, you should be on the top one, which is the onion skin. And your transparency should be set at around 50%. And this will show you what's selected and what's not. Then on the left hand, at the very top, the quick selection tool. Start in the middle of her forehead, and again, just working our way down, trying to select the skin only. Now, it does a pretty good job on the right-hand side, but I pick up all her hair on the left-hand side, so I need to get rid of that. Again, you don't want to touch the edge here. You simply want to hold down your Option key. That will turn it into the negative quick selection tool, and I'm going to start to paint my way down along this. And I'm also going to include the background because I don't want that part of it. So in this case, I've still got a small little bit of hair that's up at the very top that shouldn't be in here. So I'm still holding down the Option key. And again, I'm not painting over all that really fine part of hair where her hair is transitioning from absolutely no hair on her forehead to basically full head of hair. I'm going to stay well above that. Again, I'm still working on my pasteboard, so I still have my tool outside of the image, holding down the Option key to get the minus part and simply kicking across that. And I feel relatively good about that. What I don't feel good about in all of this is, so in looking down at it, I've got problems with the fingers that are running right through the fingertips that I sort of see that are running in that background. I'm going to see if I can't, actually I'm not going to bother with those at all. That is so easy pen tool work. I'm not even going to bother with that. What I don't have in here, and look on this edge right here, you can see that I've still got part of the sweater above her shoulder is also still a part of this. I need to get rid of that. Again, still holding down the Option key. I'm going to click through that. It got rid of that part for me. But this edge that is the bane of everyone's existence right here that's running along the side of her face, we need to see if we can't get something a little bit more organic. To do that, it's the next tool down. It's the next tool down on the left-hand side at the very top. It's the Refine Edge tool. Now again, this is like the Refine Edge tool that we were using with the castle. There's no strength slider on this. You don't make this stronger or weaker. That it does not work that way. You just run it on an area and you get the result. And if you like it, you keep it. And if you don't like it, you get rid of it. You don't hit this twice. You don't hit it 3 times. That will have 0 impact on it. So I'm simply going to paint down along this side and see what sort of edge this ultimately gives me. So I'm going to come all the way down. I'm going to stop at her fingertips and just see if I like this edge a little bit better. And I do. It's not perfect, but it does give me a little bit of shape in the hair, that sort of curl in her hair. This part that's right in here is not the best. I think I can fix these a little bit more working once I get a layer mask built. It didn't really give me the eyelash that I want to get here. We'll fix that in just a second. Unfortunately, I don't have an overlay brush in this that I can actually work on, so I'm going to actually have to use that once we get into Photoshop, get back into Photoshop. I'm going to take a look down at the lower part of this, and again, the area where you can see that this is right on her fingertips, that kind of stuff. That's not really a refine edge part. That should either be easy to find that that's in or out. So I'm going to actually go back to my original quick selection tool at the very top, make it a little bit smaller, and then hold down the Option key and click on that area right around her finger, and that added it. So Command Z to undo that. I could have sworn that was, oh, actually I want to add this, so never mind. Don't hold down the Option key. I'm just clicking on that area, sort of around her fingertip. And I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm not going to worry about the eyelashes that are on the other side, although I would like to actually at least get the rest of her face there. So I just clicked on that area, it kicked out a little bit. I got part of the eyelash part. So I'm feeling pretty good about this part right now. Again, the hair part of this is never going to be completely perfect, but we'll see what we get. I'm also going to try a little bit of refine, the second tool down, along that very top area, make my brush a little bit smaller, where her hair is transitioning from her forehead to, to actually the top of her head. I'm just going to run a little bit across the top there and see if I like that better. I don't know that I necessarily do, but we'll see what ultimately happens here. So for me, this is actually, I think, relatively good. I like what it did on everybody else down in here. I'm going to check that same trouble area for her wrist. And I can see that it's still a problem area here, but that's okay. I've got the selection for that as a pen tool already done. So I'm going to go ahead again and save this as output it as a layer mask. And this is now showing me basically what I've got. We can go in and do some work on this as well. The first thing I'm going to do is pen tool out all of this stuff that's right underneath her hands, and you guys can do it with me. Remember, one of these we've actually already got. That was the part for the sweater, but we don't have the background with it, and it's just as easy to go ahead and make the whole thing. So I'm simply going to pen tool this out again. And I'm going to do the same thing for her fingers. Again, remember, you're just trying to keep the skin part, so it's not like you need to go in and select all those little hairs. You're just surrounding the fingertips. Come into the path palette. I'm going to double click again on the work path, and I'm just going to call this fingers. And command click to load that as a selection. Go back to my layers palette. First I need to feather this just slightly up to the select menu, down to modify, down to feather. 0.3, a third of a pixel is fine. Again, I'm still working on my skin layer. This is background now. I do not want to see this. I want to hide this to let the skin only show, which means I need to fill that area on this mask with black. Black is my background color, so Command Delete fills that. Command D to deselect. And then there's this part over here. You can see that there's a little bit of weirdness that's happening over here on the other shoulder. I've got a little bit of contamination right there. All of these things I can clean up slightly. So I'm going to hit the B key to get a brush. Make it a little bit larger. Make sure that it is a completely hard brush. Normal blending mode, 100% opacity, 100% flow. Black is going to be my foreground color because I need to hide these spots, and I'm just going to get rid of those two right there. And then I'm going to take a look at her skin right here. So I'm looking at that hairline as we go up along the side of this. And I do see hair in here, and I do see a couple of other things in here. This is definitely a time to go to your tablet, and we're going to try to work in a little bit of, we're just going to try to make that hairline a little bit better. You guys should know this, though, that the hairline was never meant to be perfect. It's not, it's one of the challenges of this. It's realizing that there are certain things that you can get really close at, you can get pretty good at, that kind of stuff. But the truth of it is, at a certain point, the color of her hair and the shadow on her skin are virtually identical. And if that is the case, then you're just guessing the rest. So for me to clean up this hair edge line here, just to make it a little bit better, a little less skin, a little bit more hair, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to change my blending mode of my brush to overlay. Hopefully it'll protect things a little bit, because again, I'm working on this layer mask. If you hold down your Option key and click on the layer mask, this is what we're really working on right here. As a matter of fact, we can leave the layer mask on and actually see a little bit more of what was really sort of like going on in here that we may or may not want to hang on to. So I'm going to, again, I just held down the Option key to click on the layer mask. You can see that the brackets are around the layer mask, meaning all the work that I do is going to be on this mask. I am going to change my brush to overlay. I'm going to leave the opacity at 100%, but I'm going to take the flow down to like 2%. I'm also going to make sure that this is a completely, not completely soft. I'm going to do a medium soft brush, so like a 50% hardness on the brush. And then this is what I'm going to do. Take a look at my screen here really quickly. I'm simply going to click and drag out. So I'm just doing pops and dragging out. And you can see when I did those two pops, things just got darker, and that's because black is my foreground color. That is a mistake. So Command Option Z1, 2 gets rid of that. Hit the X key. I want to paint this with white, and then again, I'm just going to start tapping this and pulling out. And I'm really just sort of doing little pops of this wherever I can see that I think it should be a little bit more. And that part looks good. Up to the top of her forehead. And again, small little pops. I'm not trying to get this completely cleaned out. I'm simply trying to soften that transition a little bit. Now, I feel pretty good about this. What I don't really know, I'm actually on the other side now, the right side of her face, and I've got a relatively small, soft line that's actually happening over there. That part actually might be good. I'll see what's really going on here in just a second. We'll tell if this is actually working for us or not. To see the image again, I'm simply going to click back on the image again. Sorry. I'm not really sure where the edge of this begins or ends on any of this. So to see that, again, you see what I'm talking about here is on this side, again, because it's hidden, I can't tell if this edge on the right side of her is done well or not. So to find out, I can still use, I can turn on the visibility of my skin mask. This mask is sitting temporarily here in my channels palette. You'll see it's called Skin Mask. If you click on it to turn it on, you'll see that it turns red, and you can sort of see what else is actually happening in here. So I am suspecting that there is skin that is still behind all of this that I can't really see. We're going to find out. I'm going to turn off the eyeball for the skin mask. And actually, we're just, again, I'm going to use an overlay brush to see what I can pick out on this edge over in here. So I'm working on the skin mask itself. I'm going to hit the B key to get an overlay brush. Now, what I'm thinking is that there's skin that is missing. So I'm going to be painting with white. White is going to be my foreground color. It's still going to be in an overlay blend mode. I am going to take my flow all the way back up just to see what's really going on. I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller, and I'm also going to make it a completely soft brush because I'm dealing with hair, I might as well blow this stuff in slowly. And then I'm simply going to start to paint down this edge right here. And you can see as I paint down my edge, I'm pulling in that black dark shadow again. So then ask yourself, I'm going to turn on the layer above it right here. Is that dark shadow skin or is that dark shadow hair? Which is it? Well, what do you guys think? It's skin, isn't it? So I'm keeping it, and I'm simply going to continue to run on down here. That'll also pull back in the eyelashes a little bit more for me, and I'm going to continue it right down along the cheek line here. Yes? Okay, so show me what you're trying to do.
Just trying to paint anything at all.
Okay, so you're working on the skin layer. That part's right. You're at an overlay brush. Take your flow all the way back up because your flow is at 2. You'll never see it. And now try it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Flow will get you guys. It's a great tool, but if you felt like this went too far, if you felt like this goes too far and you want to split the difference, actually go back in time, hit Command Z twice or however many times. In my case, it's a few more times. So let me. We can actually change the opacity of this to 50%. This will split the difference. So it'll give me half of it is hair, half of it is skin, whatever. I feel like I sound like an art director right now. Yeah, what do you want? Half of it? All right, that does not look like enough to me, so I'm going to hit it a second time with that opacity, set it 50%, and that actually seems like a really good. I'm not getting as dark of a line as I had before. That just feels like a better edge line to me. And I'm going to double click the hand, and this is this is how I'm going to go with this. Again, I'm going to click on the mask, and I'm going to invert it to sort of see what areas it did keep of the hair, what areas it didn't keep of the hair. Again, all of this is pretty much compromise here, but I feel relatively good about it. It looks a little janky right up here to me, so I don't like this part right here. You can see there's a little bit of smoothing. I see a little bit of skin here, so to get rid of that part with this still inverted, I need to paint black up here. So again, I'm going to go to the B key, hit the X key to get black as my foreground color. I'm going to go ahead and crank my opacity all the way up again. I am going to leave it as an overlay and just see if I can't get this area right in here. And it's not giving it to me in there, so I've got to go to a normal brush. I am going to make this a medium brush. Again, I'm dealing with hair, and then I'm simply going to work that area over in there just a little bit, and that feels a little bit better to me. Yeah. And the rest of it actually looks pretty good. I don't see, I'm going to come over to my mask, hold down the Option key and click on my mask just to take a look at the mask itself and see if I spot any contamination in it. All of this seems pretty good. Yeah. So I'm going to invert the mask back again so that it's back to its normal thing and click on this. And so this is now my skin, and I'm feeling relatively good about this. Save your image. So then the final thing, and you would think it's the most difficult thing, and it's actually the easiest of things. However, before we do this, I really only have one mask saved in here, the blue background, the original one. I want to go ahead and save my sweater and my skin mask as well. You can see I've got a channel that's called Skin Mask, but that's only because I've got this skin layer that's got the mask on it. If I click the layer right above it, you see that skin mask goes away because it's not on the active layer. I do want to keep, though, the skin and the sweater as discrete saved selections. So you don't have to select a layer, just hover over the skin thumbnail of the mask, hold down the Command key and click. It'll load it as a selection. Come up to your Select menu, down to Save Selection, and call it Skin. Hit Command D to deselect, and then hover over the sweater thumbnail. You don't need to select it, just hover over it. Hold down the Command key and click. You will load that as a selection. Up to the Select menu, down to Save Selection, and call it Sweater. Command D to deselect. And now if you take a look at your channels palette, I'm going to pull mine out so that you can see my entire one. You will see that I have got all of my RGB channels, and I've got my blue background, my skin, and my sweater. What I am missing is the hair. Are we good on this? So again, all I'm doing is what we've been doing all along. What selections do you have? You've got the blue background, right?
Yeah, I have that.
Do you have the skin or the sweater? No. Okay, so come over to, just hover over the mask for the skin. Hover over it. You don't need to select it, just hover over it. Hold down your command key and click it. It will load it as a selection. Did you get the marching ants? All right, first hit Command D to make sure we don't have a selection going.
Okay.
Good. And then put your cursor right over this. You don't need to select it. Hold down the Command key. No, keep holding it down.
Okay.
And click. Marching ants. Come up to, you're good. Come up to the Select menu. Come down to Save Selection. Call it Skin. Perfect. Say OK. Hit Command D to get rid of the marching ants. Good. We're going to do the same thing. Hover over the thumbnail. Hold down the Command key. Click on the thumbnail. You can't see it, but you got the sweater. Up to the Select menu. Save Selection. Call it Sweater. Say OK. Scroll down on the bottom of all that, and you should have all three of them. Yep. Everybody else is good on this, right? So this is the point where I used to leave it. I would just stop here and say, OK, you need to do the rest for your homework. But this is so easy, it just seems cruel to do that. So we're just going to finish it. So this is how you finish it. So let me reset my workspace really quick. All right, so if you've got a selection going, hit Command D to deselect. It doesn't really matter what we have visible over in layers. Come over to your channels palette. First off, I'm going to get rid of all my the extra info points because it's pushing my channels palette down. I want you to be able to see it, and I don't need all of these numbers anymore. They've all done their work. So I'm going to select the Color Sampler tool and hit Clear All, and it'll get rid of all of that information. And then I'm also going to hover right between my channels palette and the history and goose it up a little bit so I can see a little bit more of what's going on in my channels palette. I'm going to scroll down to the very bottom of it, not that you have to, but I'm going to do that. And I'm going to simply add a blank channel, a blank alpha channel. So I'm down at the very bottom of my channels palette, right next to the icon that's the square with a little plus in it. Click on that. And it simply adds a blank channel that's filled with black, and it's called Alpha 1. I'm going to change that. The reason they call it alpha is all channels that do not directly contribute to the look of your image, which would be, in the case of RGB, these RGB channels are what are creating the image. These are not alpha channels, but everybody else is. All these selections, all of this other stuff, these are all alpha channels. So that's why it's called Alpha 1. I'm going to click on it, though, and rename it, and we're going to rename this hair because that's what it's ultimately going to become. And then one by one, I'm going to get rid of everything in here that is not hair. So I am going to go, let me see how I want to do this. I'm going to invert this hair channel. So again, it's black right now. Command I will make it white. Then right above it, and it doesn't matter what order you do this in, right above it I've got my sweater selection. So I'm going to hover over the thumbnail of the sweater selection, hold down the Command key and click. It will load that as a selection, but my hair alpha channel is actually highlighted. So I've made the selection, but I'm working on this hair channel. And I want to hide the sweater. Again, I'm trying to show the hair. So the hair needs to be white. Everything else needs to be black. So with the hair channel still active, with it selected and the sweater selection active, I can see the marching ants. I'm going to fill this with black. Black is my foreground color. Option delete fills it with black. Command D to deselect. I'm going to now do the same thing with the skin. I'm going to simply hover over the skin channel, hold down the command key, click to load it as a selection. I'm still working on my hair channel down at the bottom. I don't want the skin to show in this either. I only want the hair to show, so I'm going to fill this with black. Again, Option delete fills it with black. Command D to deselect. And then finally, I'm going to do the background. I'm going to come up to the background layer, the background channel, hover over the thumbnail of the background, hold down the command key, click to load that as a selection. I am still working on my hair layer down here. I don't want the blue background to show, so I fill this with black as well. Command D to deselect. And you've got your hair selection. Now here you can see we've got a couple of those dovetail problems. They're still sitting in here. We can fix these up really quickly. Simply grab a brush, the B key, make sure it's a normal brush, make sure it is completely hard brush, 100% opacity, 100% flow, and then simply black is my foreground color. Paint out these places where they had, again, it's the dovetails. It's where these things are coming together. All of this can actually go, anything that's not considered hair. And double click on the hand and let's see how we did. I'm going to command hover over the hair channel now, command click to load it as a selection, come up to my hair layer, turn its eyeball on, make it active, and simply add it as a layer mask. And turn off my skin one, and there you go. So now I've got my hair, I've got my skin, I've got my sweater, and I've got my blue background. And I don't have any of my other versions turned on, but you can see here that certainly the transition area here, we were going to expect that was going to be a problem. I'm not too concerned about that. That's dovetailing along this side over here. It's also dovetailing. It's not too bad. It's a really thin one that runs along the top of her shoulder. It's a little iffy right there. I'm missing that as a part of this mask, so I'm going to have to find out where that is. And then this is all dovetailing right here. So that little spot that's right there, that's where the skin is missing, it's got to be in the skin layer. So I'm going to go to my skin mask right here. I'm going to go back to my path palette, and I actually kept the thing that I think was called skin, although maybe I didn't. Sweater near thumb. Nope, I didn't, so I'm simply going to make it again really quick. Pen tool. Load as a selection, feather it. 3 pixels, 0.3 is fine. Go back, it's on my skin mask. I need this to show on my skin mask, which means right now it needs to be white. And that is not, oh, that was actually on my pixel layer, not on the mask layer. Command Z to undo that. Make sure it's on the mask layer. And again, it needs to show. Command D to deselect. And we are off to the races. At this stage of the game, I would save your work. This is what you're going to turn in. Thank you so much, Verso. You're welcome. But you say to me that, okay, well, yeah, but, come on, Verso, this just, I don't know, this looks awfully janky to me. I don't know, why on earth would you use this? Why would you care about this? I need everybody to turn off everything except for the new version. Those 4 layers that you've actually got on top, I want you to put them all in a group. So select the very top one that was the hair one, come all the way down to the bottom, hold down your shift key, select the one at the very bottom. We're just going to put them into a group just to get them out of our way. I'm going to do a new group from layers, and I'm just going to call this selections. And say OK to that. And then we're going to actually do something with this. So I'm going to start with the sweater. I need everybody to come over and simply click. Again, you don't want to click on the sweater. You just want to hover over the sweater thumbnail. Hold down the Command key and click. That loads it as a selection. And then I want you to come over to your layers palette, and we are going to add an adjustment layer. And the adjustment layer we're going to add is hue saturation. And when hue saturation comes on, you'll see that because we had an active selection going, it actually adds it as a layer mask. So now I've got a selection on here that's only showing the sweater. And now I can come up to the hue slider up at the very top, and I can change this to any sweater any color sweater that I want. I can make it orange, I can make it yellow. If I get to this purple range right here and you say, oh my God, that looks beautiful, but it's way too saturated to be believable, simply grab your saturation slider and pop it down a little bit to make it a more believable color. But I can make this sweater any color in the world that I want, quickly. I'm going to leave it as blue. I don't know why. I'm feeling like spring, right? Is everybody like ready to say goodbye to winter? Yeah, me too. So let's say, I don't know, this seems like, here, we can even drag it the other way. Let's make it yellowy. Let's make it summery. Green, no. I'm going to leave it blue. Okay. But don't really like the background. So let's change that too. I'm going to hover over my background. So again, I'm going to come over into my channels palette. I'm going to hover over the thumbnail of blue background, hold down on the Command key and click on that to load that as a selection. We're going to add another hue saturation color. Well, let's try another. We'll do a solid color. Let's try this instead. Add a solid color to this. By default, mine comes up as black, but let's add, let's make it cyan. Again, I'm going to stay with this. Clearly, I'm going on this Caribbean theme. So cyan is made up of 100% green, so click on the green radio button and type in 255. Hit the tab key to come down to blue and type in 255. Again, it's a combination of pure green and pure blue, and say OK to that. I've now got a turquoisey background, so you can see. And some people would say, well, you know, come on, Versa, that's cheating. That's just a minor change. So, OK, I'll give you that. Double click on that solid color again, and this time we're actually going to make it 0 blue, and we're going to add 255 red to this. So we'll make it a yellow background. And say OK to this. And now we're actually getting sunnier and brighter. And go in and zoom in and take a look at the edge of this, guys. This is fucking beautiful.
My selection, so I'm gonna go back.
All right, you've added way too many masks, so throw this whole thing away. Okay. The whole layer. Just throw the whole layer away. Fine. Okay, go ahead and click on this guy to make him active. And let's scroll up to the very top. You've still got another, get rid of that mask as well. Delete it. And then you've got something selected down here. So scroll down here, and there's an eyeball on by the sweater. Turn it off. All right, so we're going to change the sweater first. Right. Hover over that, hold down the Command key, and click. It loaded as a selection. Come down here. We're going to add a hue adjustment layer. Perfect. It already puts the mask on it for you. Just grab the hue and slide it anywhere you want it. Make it any color you want. Okay. Works the same for anything else, right? You just did a background. Yeah, or anything. We can do her hair. So let's do her hair really quickly. So I am going to Command click on her hair to load it as a selection. This time I'm going to add also a hue saturation layer. But because her hair doesn't really have any color to it, no matter what you really take this thing up to or down to, whatever, it doesn't really change a whole heck of a lot. So I'm going to leave mine at 0. However, if you click this colorize button right here, it will actually colorize her hair. By default, it always starts at this red color right here. And I'm just going to leave it at that. If you wanted to have it to look a little bit more synthetically dyed, you can actually bump this up. You can pull this down. But look at what we've actually done to this image. All because of the quality of your selections. So when you think about doing this work, I know all of you are thinking, well, yeah, when the hell am I going to use that? Again, this is all about making great selections. That's what this whole exercise was about. It's not about cutting this girl apart and then putting her back together again. Are we good on this part? Okay.
So, I was having issues making the hair mask.
We will go over it right after the end of class. Okay. Is everybody else clear about this? What just happened? What we did? You can throw away these adjustment layers. I want to talk about one last thing here really quick, and it's spill. So what I would like to do now is we're just going to separate, I'm going to put her on a white background. So what I'd like to do is make a copy of the new version. So I've just gone down, selected the new version, hit Command J to make a copy of it, and then I'm going to turn off my selections so I don't see any of that. But I need to put a white layer between new version and the new version copy, because what I'm going to do is get rid of the blue background on the very top one. So to do that, everybody see what I'm at right here? I've just got new version copy. Are we good? Select the bottom one, and then we're going to simply add a solid color adjustment layer in between. So come up and add solid color adjustment, and we're simply going to make a white layer. So again, white by definition is 255 red. Hit the tab key to go to the green, 255. Tab key, 255 to go to the blue. So 255 for all the red, green, and blue makes white by definition, and we've actually got a white color fill right here. So I'm going to come over here to my blue background selection in my channels palette, hover over the thumbnail, hold down the command key and click it. It loads it as a selection, and I'm going to come over to the new version copy on the very top, and I'm going to add it as a layer mask. Now in this case, it shows the background, hides the girl. I want the exact opposite of this. So simply Command I to invert it. And now I've actually got the girl on white background, but there's an issue, and the issue that we have here is spill. And you can see it right here on the edge. This is what we were talking about. You can see there's a blue fringe around this. Isn't that happening on your rolls? Right? And the blue fringe is the giveaway that you've actually done this. And so we need to fix this spill issue. But this is what I was talking about. This is not a mistake. It's not an error that's happening in the mask. It's the fact that hair has a translucency to it, and it's allowing some of that color to come through. So this is to be expected. But because we've changed the background now, we need to fix it. This is a destructive move. You cannot do this on the new version, or so something that we've actually are using to protect this, you can't do this to it because this is a destructive move. So I am going to go to my pasteboard to do this. Actually, it was already on the pasteboard, so let me just get back there again. So to do this, what we need to do is the layer mask is doing the work. It's what's actually hiding the blue background. What I simply need to do is change the color of this. The problem is that if I change it, if I simply come in and paint it, well here, I'll show you what will end up happening. So select your pixel layer, not the mask. The mask has actually done its work. Select the pixel layer of this. Hit the B key to get a brush. We're going to make this a completely soft brush. Make it a little bit larger brush. And then I need to sample a color of her hair. So to do that, if you click on the foreground color picker, it will open up. And then we can simply come in and select a color of her hair. I don't want to really select a highlight there. I'm going to select something sort of in this mid-range here. All of them are going to be shades of gray because her hair basically has no color in it. It's just dark. It's dark gray, dark black, light gray, highlights, whatever, but it's not red or green or whatever. And I'm going to go ahead and say OK to that. Then I'm actually going to paint on this layer. However, if I use a normal brush, this is what happens. And you can see it simply kills it because it's not only changing the color of it, but it's changing the luminosity. Remember, luminosity is tone. We want to keep the luminosity. We simply want to change the color. So hit Command Z to undo that, and instead change the blending mode of your brush from normal down to color. and do the same thing. I'm going to make a little bit larger brush. And you will actually see it maintains all the luminosity. So you keep all the highlights and shadows. You merely change the color to get rid of the spill. Now in this case, I've got a very soft brush because I'm trying to brush this in so that I don't see a transition of old color and new color. But by the time you get down to her face, you need to worry about this. So look what happens. Look at my screen really quickly. This is what's really going on. I'm going to paint right over her eye. Look at this. I have changed all of this area of her face to that same color. But the reason you still see her eyes and her skin and her pores and all of that kind of stuff is because I'm not killing the luminosity. Does this make sense what's going on? Right? If I hit Command Z to undo that and I change the blending mode of my brush back to normal, this is what happens when I do that same move. No luminosity here at all. So that's the game that we're actually playing here. So again, I'm going to go back to changing the blending mode of my brush to color. By the time you get down to her fingers, though, you need to worry about this because, again, I've got a very soft brush here, and when I paint this away like this, look at the overspray that just happened right onto her fingers. That's not going to work. Command Z to undo that. Change your brush at this point back to a completely hard brush, and then you can paint in that area that's running right along her fingers and not actually get her fingers. I actually clipped her face right up here. So again, Command Z to undo that, and we'll try this one more time. And that's how you get rid of spill. Make it a really small brush and deal with this part. Are there questions about this? So this part's great. What I will say about this, though, and I'll show you this last part, and then we're going to actually move on to something else. There's some on the other side over here as well, so I'm going to zoom into the other side over here. As you're doing this work, you don't want to pick a single color. You want to vary your color just like you see the, if you look at her hair, there's highlights and shadows. There's a little bit of color in here. Things vary a little bit. And you want to go ahead and vary your spill removal as well. The problem that I've got is I don't want to keep coming back here every time and picking this color picker and picking a new thing and saying, okay. So with your brush actually selected, if you hold down the Option key, you temporarily will get the color picker. So hold down, hover over her skin. You'll see exactly what I mean. Hover over her skin with a brush selected, hold down the Option key and click, and you will see that your new foreground color is her skin color. If you come over to her hair, hold down the Option key, click, again, now you've got her hair color is the foreground color, and then you can continue. So I resample a lot. To just do this area down here, I might do 3 or 4 different colors just to sort of mix that part up. There is also 2 purple dots that are sitting right here that are a flaw in the sensor. You can simply get rid of those guys doing the same thing. Finally, there's 2 things that are happening on this edge that are over here. The edge over here is actually got a blue tint to it, so I'm still going to do my same trick, holding down the Option key and click on this to sample the color of the sweater, and then I'm going to go over this, which actually does get rid of the blue tint. However, it's actually a darker line there as well. To get rid of the darker line, we can actually lighten it up. This is now luminosity that we've got to worry about, and we'll try this. Sometimes this works, sometimes this doesn't work. You can actually change the color blending mode of your brush down to luminosity. It's still sampled with that same color, but you've got to really kick your flow back. I'm going to bring my flow down to like a 2, 3, something, a 1. And I'm just going to start scrubbing my way along because this will change everything. And that looks pretty good to me. And boom. Take a look at your work. Even at this simple stage of the game. Do you know how few people in the world can do this shit? And every single person in this room can. I keep thinking right now inside, there should be a little person inside of you that's just jumping up and down with more energy than they can sustain right now. Because this is where you guys are actually going. Are we good on this part? Save this, turn this in, this is your homework. To get out of here, hit the F key once to get to the black pasteboard, F key again to get to the normal one. We are going to close this up. We don't need to save it. And yeah, we're going to end on one note here. Yeah, I'm going to try this with a different file. I don't want to do this with your homework file. So let me find the file to open really quickly. Yes, in your all's class 5 folders, there should be a folder that is called 201008115_ver_urban_02. Can you guys find that file? I mean that folder? Class 5? Are we good? Okay. There's 2 raw files in there. There may be XMP files or may not. It doesn't matter. Select both of the files and then open them. You should open up in Camera Raw. Again, I've got XMP files, so mine are already color balanced. But if yours are not, all I want to do is color balance this image using the color card. So I'm going to come over to my basic panel, select the white balance tool that's right next to the word that says white balance. Click on the gray patch that's right next to the red patch on the color card. Come up to the very top of this thumbnail of that image that's got the card in it. As you hover over the top right-hand corner, you'll get the little 3 dots. Click on the little 3 dots and come down to Select All. Then go right back to that very same space, the little 3 dots a second time, and come down to do Sync Settings. And then you can leave it at its default. All we've changed was the color balance, and that will actually give you the image that's underneath it color balanced. And we can open this up. Whether it's a smart object or not, it doesn't really matter. So there is a program that I have. It costs, I don't know, $400 or $500, whatever, that allows you to actually do green screen work and knock out green screens. What I'm going to show you works better than the $500 program dedicated to do this. And I'm actually the only person I know that knows this trick. I picked it up from somebody, but nonetheless. Anyway, not that nobody else does this, but this will be a good one for you. How many people in this room use actions? Okay, actions are designed to do anything that you're going to do repetitively. And we are going to do this repetitively. So we're going to build an action to do this. But what I want you to look at first, so basically the goal is just to replace the background. I want to get rid of the green and put in a different background. Compositing, right? If I take a look at my red channel, it does not help me out at all. Again, the way we've been doing this before. If I look at my green channel, it's kind of good. Not really great for the hair, but kind of good. If I look at the blue channel, no help here at all. So I am not thinking this is going to be my best method is to go after one of these channels. So instead, we are going to build an action that will actually give us a better head start as far as the channel goes. Make sense? But I want to build this as an action, so this is going to be a twofer. We're running a little tight on time, but I think we're going to be able to get through this. So to build an action, come over to your Actions palette. It's all right next to your History palette, and click on it. Most of you, if you've never done any other thing else, you will just have a thing that says Default Actions underneath it. It's a group. They're groups. You can group your actions into for different reasons. Most of you are only going to have the default action group. That's fine. What an action will do, though, is the way you build them is that you start to record anything that you do in Photoshop that as long as the recording is on, it will build that into the action for you. And then when you stop, you can just play it back and you'll see how it works. So they're very simple to make. It just means we don't have to do repetitive work over and over and over again. So to build this action, look at the little 3, the menu that's right across from the Action tab. Click on that drop-down menu and you will have an opportunity to do New Action. And a dialog will open up and it'll offer you to name it. And you're going to name yours Zero Selective Color. I just do SEL for color. Zero Selective Color. Now, I've got multiple sets of actions here. You can see in my drop-down menu I have multiples. If you haven't done any other sets, you're only going to have default. That's fine. Just leave it in the default. That's where it's going to go. We don't need to add a function key. We don't need to add colors to this. We simply need to hit the record button. So with the record button now going, anything we do will be recorded into this action. So your first move, over in the Layers palette, click on the adjustment layer, again, the little circle, half white, half black, and you want to come up and you want to add a hue saturation layer to this. We good? Come right back down to that very same, we're going to add a second adjustment layer, click on that, and the second adjustment layer we're going to add on this is Selective Color. With Selective Color on here, look up at your Properties panel. You need to make sure that the Absolute Radio button is actually selected, so the Absolute at the bottom. At the top, you'll have a drop-down menu. By default, it always comes up as reds. You want to leave this as reds. Then you want to take the black slider. The black is the only thing we touch in this. The black slider that's at the bottom of the Properties panel, and you want to drag this all the way to the right. And what we've just done is we've just told Photoshop anything that's in your image that we consider to be pure red, we want to flood that with black ink. And you can see her face is beginning to take on a sort of like a little bit of a little more tone in it, because we just flooded the red in her face with black ink. Then you want to come down to the next color. So click on that drop-down menu that's at the very top of the properties, come down to yellows, and the same move. Grab the black slider at the bottom, drag it all the way to the right. And we are going to do this for every single one of those colors. So back up to the greens, drag the black slider all the way to the right. Up to the cyans, drag the black slider all the way to the right. Back up to the blues, drag that slider all the way to the right. Back up to the magentas, drag that slider all the way to the right. Back up to the whites. Now in this, we're going into tones now, and it's mislabeled. It really should be reading highlights, midtones, and shadows, but it reads whites, midtones, or whites, grays, whatever it reads. Anyway, same thing still. Black slider all the way to the right. Go to the neutrals, which should be midtones, black slider all the way to the right. And then finally blacks, black slider all the way to the right. And your image should be black. If your image is solarized, look at my screen, if your image looks like this, it's because you don't have the Absolute Radio button selected on this. So has everybody got a black image? Then come back over to your Actions palette, and you'll see that there's a little red button at the bottom that indicates that we're actually recording. Sorry. And the little square that's next to it is how you stop recording. And click on that, and we've actually built our first action. So to find out if it worked, I want you to throw away both of those adjustment layers. Come back over to your Actions palette. Now you will see that your action recorded, but it's also in steps. This action's got a little drop-down triangle, and then you can see the steps under it. You can collapse that triangle. You don't want to start your action anywhere in the middle. You can leave it open, it doesn't matter. You just want to make sure to run the action that you select the parent. You select the actual word Zero Selective Color. You don't want to select Start Measure, Make Measure Adjustment Layer. You want to start at the very top. And then if you look at the bottom of that palette, you will see that there is an arrow that points to the right. This is supposed to be like a tape recorder. If you click on that, it will run your action. Now you'll see in my case, it built both of my layers. However, I've got that really solarized look to it. It gets confused sometimes with the radio button, so I'm simply going to select on Absolute, and I should be good to go.
Okay, mine said the command set is not currently available. I'm gonna click here.
This is a smart object to begin with, but that's okay. Go ahead and hit stop. And come up to the top here where it says Zero Selective Color. No, you didn't need to close it. Just click. We've lost it. You need to go down. It's that one right there. Don't click on the triangle, click on the action. Click on that, and then click on the arrow. Done. How fast was that? Okay, here's the trick. Go back up now to the green channel, or the green drop down in that menu part, and take your black slider all the way from the right side all the way to the left. Now, this is a concept that works in Photoshop because Photoshop's digital mathematical. It doesn't really, there's not really an equivalent in the printing world. But what we had done is we had flooded all of those colors and all of those tones with black ink, and because we flooded everything with black ink, we had a black image. But now what we're doing is we're flooding it with negative black ink, and the negative black ink is white. So you can do this in Photoshop. We have just now filled the greens of this image with white ink. And that's why the background looks so light. Now, it's not a perfect white because that's not a perfect green. But we can fix that with step number 2. Go down to your hue saturation layer that's right underneath that. Make it active. Come up and click on the little hand. That's the targeting adjustment tool up in the properties panel. Bring that hand over to your image. You'll see it looks like a little eyedropper. If you click and hold down, you will get the double-headed hand. If you drag to the right, you saturate the image. If you drag to the left, you desaturate the image. In this case, we are trying to get the green to be a more pure green. However, if you zoom into this girl's face, into her hair, you can see that I'm getting this halo around her hair. It's because I'm driving the saturation too hard. So I'm going to, again, simply pull my saturation back until I don't have that white halo around her hair. This varies from image to image, but in our case right here, yeah, we're not going to be able to do any saturation move in this at all because it's going to fuck up her hair. So in some cases, in the image you guys are going to work on for your homework, you might be able to punch the saturation a little bit to get a little bit more contrast. But so far, we've actually got a really pretty good image here to be our initial channel to knock this image out. Wouldn't you guys agree? So to finish this, we've got perfect timing. We are going to finish this right now. So this is going to be my new channel. This is going to be my new starting place right here. So to do this, come over to your channels palette. If we click on the RGB image at the very top, you can see the screen that we've got. In theory, this is a black and white image, and all of these should be identical. The channels should be. However, the channels are all identical, but they are different than the composite. If you click on the red channel, what you'll see is the background actually just got a little bit lighter. Now, if you go to the green or the blue, it won't matter. None of that changes because, again, it's a black and white image, equal amounts of RGB. But we don't want to load the luminosity of the RGB composite. We simply want to copy either the red, green, or the blue channel. So I'm going to select the red channel, and I'm simply going to drag it down on top of the box that's got the little plus in it to make a copy of it. I'm going to double click on that and call it Knockout and say OK to that. Then these adjustment channels have done their job. I don't need them anymore. You can throw the adjustment layers away. We don't need them. They did everything they were supposed to do. Thank you so much. Don't care about you anymore. And then I'm going to come over and just finish working on my Knockout. So I'm over here on my Knockout. I'm going to zoom in. Usually at this stage of the game, the image, the figure will be pretty much black. The figure actually is pretty much black. However, if you look at it like her top right shoulder, you can see there's some glitter. There's a little bit of stuff in there. I'm going to put a color sampler point there. I mean, I might as well try to get this as much of the body as I can. So up to the eyedropper tool, come down to the color sampler tool, and I'm going to put a drop on one of the lightest parts of that little glitter on her shoulder that I can. And then I'm simply going to throw another point out on the background. I have my 2 points. This is exactly what we have done all for the last 3 weeks, guys. Change the eyedroppers to read RGB. So my number 1, I just click on the number 1 eyedropper, RGB. Click on the eyedropper for number 2, RGB. Hit Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. Grab the shadow slider first. I'm trying to get this 13 down to 0. I get it too close, I go to my arrow keys, I tap it in to get to 0. I go to my white point, I pull it way back. I get to close to 255, but not quite there. This is exactly what we just did with Sunny. I get stop. I can go to my arrow keys to actually tap this in and recheck my first one. I'm good to go here. I want to take a look at what this did to her hair before I say okay to this. So I'm going to use my preview on and off. That part actually looks pretty good to me, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. I'm going to go ahead and say okay to this. I'm then going to see how we did. I'm going to command click to load this as a selection. I'm going to come back. Well, take it back. Hold on. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I'm going to go back up to the top to select my RGB guy. Double click on the hand to kick all the way back out. I'm going to make a copy of my background layer. Command J. I'm going to select the background layer so that I can put a white layer in between the two, just a solid color, so I can see what this girl looks like on a white background. So simply click on my adjustment layers and come up and say I want to add a solid color, and I'm going to pick white and say fine. And then I'm going to select this top layer and I'm going to load my knockout and apply it. So my knockout's at the bottom of my channels palette. Hover over the thumbnail, hold down the command key and click to load this as a selection. Come back over to my layer number 1 and click on it and say add layer mask. And again, typical of me, I've inverted this. I don't know why it's always that way, but just hit Command I to invert it, and you've now got a girl completely knocked out. And how long did that take you? And it didn't cost you $500 for the program. Yes?
I got a different white background, so I had to go back out.
You did what?
So when I did the,
So click down here.
right,
We're going to add a white background, so solid color. Nope. Adjustment. Solid color.
I did that.
White's it. Say OK. Click on the very top here because we're going to isolate that. Go down and load your knockout. Command click. Back here, add layer mask.
Click on here or just add layer?
Well, it's already active.
Oh, yeah.
And then you need to invert that. It's just the opposite. Command I. I know. Take a look at this, guys. Let's gild the lily right now. You won't be able to do this because you've got a smart object doing that, but everybody else, because we have 1 minute to go, simply zoom in. Again, this is not my virgin copy. This is my protective copy that's right down here. Select the layer itself. Hit the B key to get a brush. Make sure that it is a completely soft brush. Change the blending mode to color. Change the flow and opacity up to 100%. Make your brush a little bit bigger. I'm going to start on this side of her head on the right-hand side. I'm going to hold down the Option key, click to sample that color hair over there, and simply paint out. I'm going to resample down here to paint that spill out. I'm going to resample up at the top to paint that spill, resample at the peak to paint out that spill, resample here to get that spill, resample here to get that one, resample here to get this one, resample here just to mix it up, resample again to get this part, resample again. Now that I'm getting down by her head, I actually need to go to a completely hard brush so that I don't spray onto her face. And get it a little bit smaller and just come around this part and take out that spill. She's got spill on the side of her face, so I'm actually going to sample her face on that side and remove the spill on that. Too big of a brush. And that brush should go soft again, so I'm going to undo this. It's too hard, you can spot it, so maybe a 50% hardness. Yeah, that's better. Resample over here. You'll notice that she's actually got green spill on her outfit. It doesn't change. You simply sample the color of her outfit and paint through and get rid of all of that spill. And the other side as well. Now, when I'm running my cursor, look at this, guys. I'm running my cursor over this, and I'm still reading tone in this. So my levels move did not completely clean this background out. That doesn't mean we can't hit it again. So I'm going to actually hold down my Option key and click on just the mask, and you can see all the contamination that's still in here. So I'm simply going to add another color sampler tool out into this area that's right out into here and change it to read RGB. And you can see I'm reading in the 25s. Command L to bring up the levels dialog box. This is just one move. Sorry, too far. Go to the arrow keys. And say OK to that. And it's completely cleaned out. But look at the quality of this. Are you guys crazy? That took us 15 minutes. Are there questions about any of this? Okay, basically for the homework, there is an image in there. You are supposed to use 3 different methods to knock that image out, including the one that we just saw. You're going to add a white background to one of those, and you are going to remove the spill from all of that. The other thing is that you need to start working on thinking of what you are going to do for your final project for this class. And again, I'm just saying your final project should be something that matters to you. I will show you samples of final projects next week. The written part of this is not due for a couple of weeks, so just start thinking about it. You're not locked into stone. Your idea can evolve, but you should hopefully be building images for yourself using the skills that you've actually developed in this class. Does that make sense to everyone? Are there any questions about any of this? I'll see you guys next week.
Mark, I have a question. You said I have a smart object, so I couldn't clean it up at the end.
Yeah, you can't, because it's, again, you can't paint on a smart object. But you can change that.